Welcome to Sports Talk 2319, and I am your host, Rashad Phillips. I'm excited to bring you my episode today. I want to talk about a few teams that has surprised people thus far, and I also want to talk about a team or two that a lot of people don't think they lived up to the expectations just yet. And also, I got players for you. Let's go! A few episodes ago, I told you guys about a few teams that I believed would have some early success this season, and that's come out to be the TCU Horned Frogs. If you look at this team, they're built for the long haul. I told you guys about the emergence and the maturity level of the point guard, Jalen Fisher. He has played really well thus far, making guys around him better. You look at Kenrich Williams, who was a double-double machine last season. He's continued his dominant ways. He's more efficient this season. And if you look at the quality of wins already, they've beat a really good SMU team. They beat New Mexico by 2 points, who's a really tough team. And they've also beat a St. Bonaventure team. Yes, they didn't have Jalen Adams. And if you ask me, Jalen Adams is the number one point guard in the country, but that St. Bonaventure unit is still a very lethal team. So this TCU Horned Frogs team is a unit that I believe can go all the way. And when I say all the way, I'm meaning they probably can win the Big 12 tournament championship. So let's keep our eyes on TCU, like I told you guys once before, because they're very exciting to watch and they play dog dig down defense. The Miami Hurricanes is another team that I told you about briefly. Right now, this Hurricane unit is 8-0, and they have played extremely well to this point. They have great perimeter play. They get out in transition. They're extremely athletic, and they're a tough-nosed set of guys. This is the thing about this team. They have a game against George Washington coming up. They play Hawaii after that. This team easily could go into conference play undefeated. That's saying a lot. They had a quality win. They beat Minnesota convincingly. So this may be a 30-win type of team. They got the right players in play with Bruce Brown Jr. and Lonnie Walker is starting to find his rhythm, so to speak. So I really like this Miami unit. Let's stay tuned and watch these guys. Everybody's tweeting me and texting me and emailing me, what's going on with Arizona? What's the problem? Well, I don't think there's a problem in Arizona. I believe that they started out flat against Purdue. They lost that one. Purdue's a very good team, and they lost to a very good SMU team. And if you look at it, I actually watched the NC State game that they lost. And let me tell you something about NC State. They have a point guard named Alaric Freeman who is as good as any point guard using the ball screen. This kid has an NBA body. He knows how to make the right play. And during that game against Arizona, he just completely took advantage of Arizona's bad ball screen defense. The big kid, DeAndre Ayton, struggled hedging the screens, and Alaric continued to turn the corner, and he kind of carved Arizona up. So they don't have any bad losses. They've lost to 3 pretty good teams. So I believe if Parker Jackson Cartwright can be a little bit more aggressive from the point guard position, and they don't have Raleigh Alkins back yet, this team just needs to continue to gel. And believe me, Arizona will be in the thick of things when it comes to March. Everybody's concerning themselves with the Florida Gators because this team got off to a hot start, played Duke down to the wire. They lost that one, and they lost to their in-state rival, Florida State. But I think what got everybody panicking is the loss to Loyola Chicago. Now, Wait a minute. Let me break it down for you. Loyola Chicago is not a bad team. After that win against Florida, that improved that team to 9-1. I watched Loyola Chicago beat a UNC Wilmington, a very good team. I watched them beat Wright State. And listen to me, Andre Jackson is the real deal. This kid can play.
Loyola coming in shooting 52% from the field. That's the 8th best mark in America. Jackson lines up an open three. Did we mention they can shoot? That's Andre Jackson, preseason first team all Missouri Valley.
So Loyola Chicago is a very respectable team. Now I know the name doesn't match. They're considered a mid-major unit, but this team can play. And Florida started out really flat. They shot 2 for 19 from three. They shot 36% from the field, and they only had 7 total assists. That stat line, you're not going to beat too many teams with that stat line anyway. Now, what concerns me going forward with the Gators is that the schedule is not easy. They got Clemson coming up. They got Texas A&M. They got Kentucky. And the SEC overall is just a tough conference. So let's hope that the Gators can weather this storm and get back to their winning ways. Last week, I told you guys how the game is becoming positionless, but that doesn't take away the actual names of the positions that you play. I want to break down the point guard position to you guys today because there's different types of point guards that are on the court. And what I'm going to do right here is give you the 4 different styles of point guards that are active in today's game. Let's start with the scoring point guard. This point guard, this style of point guard is very difficult to defend because they're always looking for opportunities for blown assignments and mistakes on the defense. They're very hard to scout against because the ball is always in his or her hands. They're calculated, they're smart, they're fearless, and they're aggressive. Let me take you on a little bit of a trip with me and kind of give you the origin of where I believe the scoring point guard started. I believe it started at the mid-major level. If you look at guys like Earl Boykins, Speedy Claxton, Jameer Nelson, myself, and the list goes on and on, the remedy to winning basketball games were at the mid-major level was go get a scoring point guard and recruit guys that were accustomed to being utility guys. That has transpired to winning games at that level. And the high major started to see that it was very successful at the mid-major level. So now we seeing the scoring point guard migrate to the high major schools. Let's look at Alabama with Colin Sexton, scoring point guard. Let's look at Arizona State with Trey Holder and Shannon Evans. Let's look at Marquette with Andrew Rousey and Marcus Howard. These high major teams are now embracing the scoring point guard. My favorite position, the pass point guard. I like to call these guys the table setters. This type of point guard fits perfectly with a supporting cast of athletic and scoring teammates. This type of style of point guard usually possess great leadership qualities and they compete really hard. Just because I call them pass point guards does not mean they do not have the ability to score the ball. But 7 out of 10 times, they rather initiate offense and deliver the orange, a la Cassius Winston from Michigan State and Kyron Cartwright out of Providence. And let me take you back a little bit so you can look at some film. Bobby Hurley from Duke. Traditionally, this type of style of point guard has always won games on every level, high school, college, and pro. The pass point guard. The defensive point guard. This style of guard prides themselves on guarding the ball 94 feet, causing havoc in half-court sets, playing the passing lanes, and just being flat-out disruptive. These style of guards are much better when they're playing alongside a combo guard that can score and make plays on the offensive end. When you think of defensive point guards, you think of a guy like, let's go back a couple years, Aaron Craft out of Ohio State that played from 2010 to 2014, an extremely gifted defensive player. But when you speed it up into today's game, you look at a guy like Kyrie Thomas out of Creighton, who's a fantastic defensive guard who has elevated his offensive standards as well. So this type of point guard is very hard to play against. So when you run into one of these, you're going to have a long night. The shooting point guard, this type of point guard thrives in the half-court sets that put them in situations to get them open so they can utilize their jump shot. This type of guard doesn't dribble the ball a lot, doesn't dance with the ball particularly, but they use their teammates so they can find space, so they can do what they do best, and that's make shots. When you're playing defense against a shooting point guard, I would advise you to not make a mistake, because if you do, they're going to make you pay. Now, after hearing all four of my point guard styles, you're probably looking at me saying, well, that's what all point guards should possess, all four qualities. But if you look closely at the game of basketball, there's not a lot of point guards historically that possessed all four of those characteristics. And let's talk NBA players here so I can kind of simplify what I'm trying to get across to you right now. Let's look at Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson, to me, is the greatest point guard to ever play the game. And Magic Johnson only possessed 2 out of 4 of those styles I just mentioned. He was a pass point guard, and I would give him the scoring point guard as well. But he wasn't the defensive point guard, and he wasn't the shooting type of point guard. But Magic Johnson mastered 2 of those styles for him to go down as the greatest point guard in my book. Let's take some other NBA guys. Let's look at Steph Curry. To me, Steph Curry has 3 out of those 4 styles. He's a scoring point guard, a shooting point guard, and a passing point guard. But he doesn't have the defensive one. So he gets 3 out of 4. Let's look at Steve Nash. I think Steve Nash has 3 out of the 4. The same as Steph Curry. Jason Kidd has 2 out of the 4. Jason Kidd was a defensive point guard, and he was a pass point guard. Now, Isaiah Thomas from the Detroit Pistons, to me, I believe he had all 4 qualities. So you don't need all 4 qualities to be great. So people at home understand when you're looking at these point guards that are playing, they can possess one of those styles and still be great. It's just the way the game is starting to evolve. The player I want to talk about today is 6'2" Max Heidegger out of UC Santa Barbara. This kid's tremendous. Let me give you his story really quick first. He had a stress fracture in his back in high school, so he sat out a full year. He transfers over to Oaks Christian with no intentions to play. His back heals up, and then he has a prolific senior season. Now he's at UC Santa Barbara, and he's one of the top scorers in the country, averaging just under 23 points a game, 45% from the field, and shooting 42% from 3. Now, when you look at Max, he doesn't pass your eye test. He has like that Clark Kent Superman vibe. When that ball goes up, this kid is the most talented player on the court. He has a tremendous jump shot, great trajectory on his release, great athlete, scores mentality. Just watching him on tape dissect defenses, I believe if if Max converts himself to more of a point guard play because he's a combo guard, but if he really converts himself to the point guard position, this kid has some Steve Nash type of qualities about him because he has the ability to initiate offense and hit shots. You can't leave him open. You can't give him too much space. He's a natural born scorer. So everybody on the west side, on the west coast, please tune in to UC Santa Barbara because Max is the real deal. John Elmore out of the Marshall Thundering Herd, 6'3" junior point guard. This kid's tremendous. Averages just under 24 points a game, around 7 to 8 assists, 2 steals. I really love watching this kid play because he has a huge chip on his shoulder. Despite having a prolific high school career, didn't get a lot of offers, and now he's leading the charge for the Marshall Thundering Herd under Dan D'Antoni, the brother of NBA coach Mike D'Antoni. When you look at this kid on tape, excellent in pick and roll, makes the right play 90% of the time, makes everyone around him better, and he doesn't allow the defense to speed him up. He goes wherever he wants with the ball in his hands, and he's just great at dissecting the defense. Now, when you dig deeper, you see that where he gets it from. His father, Gay Elmore, was a phenomenal player. When his father graduated from Virginia Military Institute, he was the all-time leading scorer, scoring 2,423 points. That apple has not fallen far from the tree. Everybody tune in to the Marshall Thundering Herd because John is a joy to watch. Thank you guys for joining me on this episode. I really enjoyed sharing my knowledge with you guys today. Until the next time, I'm Rashad Phillips, and this is Sports Talk 2319. Love my expertise info on college basketball players? Want to perfect your own play? Order my training DVD collection now at www.rpskillsunlimited.com.